Please welcome the very funny Nick Jameson!
Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you tonight with one purpose and one purpose only. To tell you good people a dick joke. It's a rather long one. A joke. And it concerns men's preoccupation with size, which is ridiculous and out of hand. Although many women know that it can be quite useful. Because the fact is, you can say just about any insulting, fucked up thing to a guy, and if it includes a mention of his dick being big, he won't even mind. Jeff, you fucking moron, you are so stupid. I think all your brains have dribbled down into that magnificent ramrod cock of yours. Yeah, you think? Paycheck were big enough to fill up its giant, perfectly formed tip. We might be able to afford a decent apartment, you pathetic, pitiful, broke-ass, hung like an elephant bastard! Yeah, you're right. Glad we had this talk. Now, there are other guys who, no matter how much you reassure them, they're still insecure, and that is the hero of this song I'm about to sing. I'm an average guy. I don't give a whole lot of thought to the length of my bones, but I keep noticing from time to time that everybody's junk looks bigger than mine. I've measured my stuff in average size, but you know to me it looks smaller than the other guys. Is that an illusion or something with my eyes? Or cause I live in Iceland and I'm circumcised? Inside joke. Well, I didn't think I'd get about this stuff, but I guess I do. You know, I really wouldn't mind another millimeter or two. Cause everybody's junk looks bigger than mine. Ain't nothing I can do, so I guess I don't mind. Ain't nothing like a room or watching porn online. Everybody's junk looks bigger than mine. Mid-size got the sparks. I don't mean to complain. I can cross my legs without feeling no pain. I don't have to be man-spreading every time I sit, or worry about flushing myself down the toilet every time I shit. It don't tickle my toes when I walk, or poke me in the eye when I whack off without headphones. Something it ain't no just combine, you ain't nobody's vagina. Well, it ain't that long, that's for sure. Don't reach my belly button, let alone my back door. Oh, it's been suggested to me numerous times. Don't think I could go fuck myself if I tried.
Nick Jameson is an American musician, actor, and producer. Born in Missouri and raised in Philadelphia, Nick has had a lengthy career in music, from joining the band Foghat in the mid-1970s to solo albums and work with Motown. Nick then turned to acting. Notable credits include playing the Russian president in 3 seasons of 24, alongside an extensive body of voiceover work. From there, Nick moved into the world of stand-up comedy and relocated to Rejkjavik, Iceland in 2014. Welcome, Nick. Delighted to have you on.
Good to be here, Conor.
So first question, Philadelphia. What was it like growing up in the 50s and 60s?
Philly is great. Boy, what can I say? It's a great music town. I was there during the sort of rock and roll hippie years. I had a band. We were probably the most popular band in Philly at the time. I'm talking about my teen years now. Going back, I grew up in a place called Garrett Hill, which was, I would say, mostly African-American neighborhood. So that really It's a very real place. There's not a lot of bullshit in Philly. People tend to be real down and real with each other. I mean, people say the same thing about New York, and I guess it's true. It's I always I feel like I'm coming home when I go there.
In terms of Missouri, how would you contrast Philadelphia with Missouri?
Well, I only lived in Missouri when I was a kid. I was like a baby. We left Missouri. I think I was 1 or 2 years old. Moved to Greece shortly, and after that to Britain, and then we moved to Philadelphia. So I have one memory of Missouri that's getting too close to a big tower with power cables on it, and my dad getting mad at me. That is it.
And nothing eventful happened from that experience. You didn't blow up half of Missouri, did you?
No, it could have caused long-lasting trauma, I suppose.
Yeah. And so in terms of growing up in an African-American neighborhood, obviously that must have influenced you musically.
Yeah, very much so. I've always loved blues and R&B and hip hop. Now, I mean, we would rap before it was called rap. We'd be on the corner just we called it the dozens or fuck your mama or whatever, and just rhyming at each other, doing rap battles basically, without a beat, and which is interesting because rap battles now are generally performed without a beat. So it's all very familiar to me. I just was into that from a young age.
So you would have been coming to maturity growing up in the 60s, right? So we're talking the Kennedys, we're talking civil rights, we're talking Vietnam.
I was drafted, and I went down there, and there was no way I was going to Vietnam. I thought it was a bullshit war, and as everyone I knew did, there was no way I was doing that. So I got a letter from my psychiatrist that I went to when I was a kid, talking about certain incidents that happened when I was a kid, and I didn't do anything to dissuade the draft board from thinking that was true. So I was categorized 1Y, which is you're not drafted for medical reasons. And I don't feel, and it wasn't really deception because all the stuff my shrink said was true. And, I much later in life, was diagnosed as bipolar. So, it wasn't really deception, but even if it had been, I wouldn't feel bad about it because there was just no way I was going to go fight that particular war. We're not talking Hitler,
Yeah.
We're talking about the North Vietnamese trying to get their country together,
Yeah. Well, I mean, and plus it's not deception because you were looked at by a psychiatrist and the psychiatrist made a medical decision.
Yeah. Years before. So I brought that up as a reference, but it wasn't an Army psychiatrist. I remember I came into the draft board and went through all the sort of humiliating stuff you do, walking around in your underwear, taking all these tests. And I ended up sitting down with an evaluator of some sort. I don't know if he was a doctor or what. And he said, why don't you want to go in the Army? And I said, I just don't think I'd make a very good soldier. And that apparently, along with everything else, and the pathetic way I said it, son, you're right. You're not going to make a very good soldier. Okay, you're 1Y. Get out of here.
Wow. And was that do you think a lot of people would have not qualified on psychiatric grounds?
Oh, yeah. No, I was sitting there in the room while at the end, while people were waiting to receive their designation. I'd hear out, McAllister goes up, gives his thing, 1A, and but a lot of people I knew, were conscientious objectors, or they moved to Canada, or they did any number of things, or they went to jail rather than go over there and fight that war. I guess I was lucky that I didn't have to do all of that stuff. I just felt it was an immoral war. I'm not a war fan in general. If somebody's attacking the country, that's a different story, but that was not happening. So, the war was not popular in my circle at all.
Did you protest or get involved in any marches or any movements around that time to object?
Very much so. I marched many times, got my ass kicked many times in the process. There's countless times. I was very, very much active against it.
You joined Foghat that you were developing musically, right? And you were reaching pretty high levels. Like you had your own band in the 1970s. And what was it called again? American
Dream. Yeah, it was the late 60s.
Yeah.
And we did well locally. We had a single that sort of scraped the charts a little bit nationally. We did very well, but I was the bastard who sort of broke it up because I got restless. I was very influenced by Todd Rundgren, who produced our record. He was kind of the other hotshot guitarist in town, and he was getting into engineering and then got into producing. And our band was his first production, actually. And I was just impressed and kind of inspired by what he was doing, like taking matters into his own hands. Because in those days, you go into a studio and there was an engineer and you'd had a producer, and you really had very little say about what went on, unless you were, quite a big deal. And he and I became fascinated with the whole thing of engineering. I learned a lot about that, studied it in depth, frantically, and I just thought, I want to get into that. And I got a job at Bearsville Studios. A little background: my manager, Paul Fishkin, of my band in Philly, ended up working for Albert Grossman's record company, which was called Ampex Records at the time. Later became Bearsville. And he recommended me to Albert they were looking for someone like an assistant engineer or something like that. And he got me a job up there, and I just worked as an unpaid intern for a while, and then worked my way up to an assistant, then to engineer, and then I started producing. So that's how I made that transition. And as far as joining Foghat, I worked with them a few times. They brought me some tracks from their first album that they weren't happy with. And this is my very early days. I was like, oh, wow, this is exciting. And they wanted some tracks remixed, which I did, and they liked them. And then I did their Rock and Roll Outlaws album with them, and produced it and engineered it and played a few things on it too. And so when it came time to do their next album, I was going to do that, and they had a falling out with their bass player, and they wanted me to join. And I said I'd join for a year. I also told them I could play bass, which was a lie. And, I had to learn really quick. As most guitar players, can play some sort of bass, But I knew I had to become a proper bass player. Rod Price, in particular, was very fussy about what he considered a good bass player. And
tell me, when you were producing and they brought the work to you, what do you think it was that you added that impressed them?
And that, on the Fool for the City record, that was the first one where I was a band member. And from the beginning, we started working on the songs. I just had a lot of input. Their biggest song is Slow Ride. I basically arranged it. Roger, a lot of times, gives me credit for co-writing it. I never claimed that. It was Dave's song and his idea. But I did a lot on that. And, I just brought some other musical influences in. I had to respect that they had their thing. They were a blues rock band, pretty simple. And that's who they were. That's what they did well, and that's what people liked about them. But I just tried to push it a little bit, get some more influences in there without screwing with what they had. And looking back, I think that I was successful at that. I don't think I overdid it. You know what I mean? I did a sort of a popping bass thing in the middle of Slow Ride, and people weren't doing that in hard rock in those days. It was a funk thing. Things like that. I'd use a lot of weird percussion sounds, like using a dial telephone in Slow Ride. In the middle, you can hear that. It sounds like snakes rattling. yeah, and just the way I would record stuff, and uh I just through the arranging and playing, it's hard for me to tease it all apart. But like I said, I think I brought some colors in that they didn't have before.
Mm.
And if you listen to the records, I think you can hear that. Um, and again, going in, I knew that I don't want to mess with their thing, because I'm very eclectic. I have all kinds of musical tastes, and so yeah, I'm sorry I'm not being more specific about what exactly.
Well, no, where I'm going with this is, I think because Foghat, they're a British American band, right? And you're bringing the blues and jazz to it, and I'm thinking, okay, well, like you said, you must have added a huge amount of color and nuance and something different. They thought, wow.
Yeah, well, they were big blues fans. I would say they were a blues rock band. I mean, they came out of the blues. Dave Peverett, in particular, the lead singer, Lonesome Dave, was a massive blues fan. He must have had thousands and thousands of blues albums, knew everything about everything. So I can't say I educated him. I didn't school him on the blues at all. If anything, he turned me on to a lot of stuff that I didn't know about. I would say, yeah, it was more. I had a lot of sort of New Orleans influence, keyboard wise. I had the way I learned bass was so wacky. I had to learn it really quickly, and I was influenced by people like Rocco from Tower of Power, Stanley Clark, and of course people I'd always like Jameson, Carol Kay, Paul McCartney, and I just kind of mashed a lot of that together. And I was into jazz at the time, but aside from a few chords on one of the ballads, I don't think I jazzed them up very much. But I like counterpoint, sort of funky contrapuntal stuff. You can hear in the song "Fool for the City" in the little breakdown. There's a lot of sort of guitar and bass interaction. I put a little bit of trickiness in there, a little bit of contrapuntal stuff. Again, not too much, but trying to stay within the groove. And it wasn't just sort of a generous, sacrifice on my part to stay with what they had for the most part, because I came out of that. I came out of blues rock. I came out of blues and blues rock. So, I respected the form. I wouldn't go in the studio, wouldn't have gone in with Muddy Waters and tried to get him to, add a violin part or something like that. So,
did they ask you to audition? Did they make you audition, or did they just bring you into the band?
Well, their manager called me, asked if I wanted to join, and I said I thought about it, and then I called them back. I said, "Look, I'll do it for a year," and then they said, "Yeah, well, come down and play with it." It was an audition, I went to say, "Come and audition with us," because we knew each other so well. But I was auditioning, and Rod Price, I knew, was at first a little concerned that I played with a pick rather than my fingers. And I immediately changed to my fingers.
Well, that's very odd for a bass player, right? Bass players are supposed to be plucking with their fingers, right?
Well, if you look at Carol Kay and Paul McCartney, two of the greatest bass players of all time, played with picks. Okay. So there are a number of bass players plays with picks, but he just had a thing about it, and once I started messing with it, I had a thing about it too. It's like, oh yeah, James Jameson, I'm gonna get that smooth sound. And, yeah.
So you went on the road. So Foghat are a touring band, right? They're doing a lot of shows,
right?
When you agreed to join for a year, did you have any reservations about touring, or what were your thoughts there? Why only a year? Like a lot of people would go, "Oh my God, I'm joining. This is the break of my life here."
Yeah. Well, they weren't as big as they came to be then. I think "Fool for the City," the record I did with them, and "Slow Ride" notched them way up. They were doing well though. They were mostly co-headlining and sometimes headlining in big arenas. I get my thing was that this is the kind of music I'd done a lot. And I was into other things at the time. I was living in Woodstock, New York, and I was hanging out and playing with guys like Paul Butterfield and Jeff Moldauer and Bonnie Raitt, and that a sort of a more, I guess nowadays they would call it Americana, sort of a more organic kind of down home thing. And I was getting very influenced by jazz as well. And so I felt, okay, this is fun. I love the guys. I know we'll have a good time. I'm going to do a record with them anyway. It's going to take several months. Touring could be fun, but I just didn't want to commit for more than that. We had an open-ended thing where if they said, look, if you change your mind, let's just keep going. But by the time touring got very tedious to me, the kind of touring we would do, playing big arenas, you don't really have any connection with the audience. Certainly not as a bass player. I think Dave did, but, I'm standing there and it's just bloody loud as hell. And the audience is quite far away from you. You can't really even see them. And you just see a lot of people holding up, cigarette lighters, screaming and roaring. And the first time it was a thrill. It really was. We're heading up from the dressing room and the lights go down and the cigarette lighters go up and there's this roar. It's like, oh, wow, this is cool. What an energy rush. But that got old really quick. I love playing live. I love playing, I have a blues band here in Iceland. We play in a club. And it's great. You interact with the audience. I'll do improvised blues. I'll get a suggestion from the audience. Can't do that in an arena. You know what I mean? No. And I love that, where you can interact with the audience and the sound is good and you can hear each other. And it's playing a big places like that. There's a lot of logistics involved, making sure everybody can hear each other. Trying to compensate for the dreadful acoustics that are usually there. It just wasn't my thing, at least not, if it was my band, it might have been different. But actually, when I did go out with a solo band, we opened for Bob Seger and Rush. We did toured with people like that. And still, I didn't really love playing those big places. What I love about live playing kind of got stripped out of that for me. I know people make an effort, like the Stones have made an effort to overcome that. Like a certain part of one tour, they'd go out on this sort of tongue of the stage and where they have like a very simple drum kit and these tiny little amps, and just to get closer to the audience, I think, and do a more intimate thing. Some people thrive under that in that environment, but it wasn't for me. Not long term, for sure.
What happened then when you left Foghat after about a year? What happened then?
I went to San Francisco and I wanted to study music, which I never had really. I wanted to study harmony and counterpoint, orchestration, stuff like that, which I did for a while. And then I got a call from Paul Butterfield, and he wanted to form a band. And you don't say no to Paul Butterfield if you're a guitar player. So I went back to Woodstock. And meanwhile, I'd started writing songs in San Francisco, which I hadn't really for a while. I started writing some pretty good songs. I'd written some songs started writing songs on the Foghat tour bus, actually. And so when I got together with Paul, we mostly did my songs. And but as we rehearsed and did some gigs at the Joyous Lake in town, I started to feel I want to do my own thing. Looking back, it's like, well, you playing with Paul Butterfield, what are you, nuts? But I had known Paul a long time. I'd played with him a lot. He was really a mentor of mine as far as playing the blues. I mean, he's just genius. And it's hard for me to put myself in my headspace back then, but I just wanted to go do a solo record. And he ended up playing on that record. He did several songs on that record. So that's what I did after Foghat. I spent many months up in Sharon, Vermont, where we'd done Fool for the City, the studio up on a hill in the middle of the Vermont woods, making my first record. And then I went on the road. I put together a band and went on the road. And and so began my journey away from Foghat, I guess you could say.
And then later, you moved into acting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was really as a result of a rock climbing incident. So tell us how rock climbing initiated a move into acting. We're talking about the mid '80s here, right?
Yeah. Well, I'd always loved climbing when I was a kid, and I was always an idiot because I would solo things, not super hard things, you know. And then I started getting back into it, but meanwhile, you know, the level had gone up in terms of what people were doing. My skills had not, and I ended up soloing something I really shouldn't have, and fell off it. Screwed up my ankle. I was in and out of the hospital for a year. I broke the talus bone, which is a bad bone to break. They tried fixing it a number of ways, and they ended up just fusing my ankle. And all of that took about a year. During the course of that, though, I wasn't idle. Richard Bach, the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull and Illusions and many other books, and his wife Leslie had gotten a hold of my Motown record and really liked it. And they Motown sort of hooked us up and got us in communication. Richard was coming out with a new book, One, and they wanted me to write an album to go with the book. So I did that. I demoed up pretty much a double album's worth of stuff while I had my foot in this fixator, and I had to keep it elevated at all times. So it was an interesting way to make a record. It never got released because record companies could not get with the idea. I mean, some of them didn't care for the music. Some of them really liked the music, but they thought this is not commercial.
How would you describe the music? What style was it? Americana, soft rock, bluesy, jazz? What was?
Boy, it was pretty eclectic. The idea was to create a parallel take on each chapter of the book. The book is all about parallel universes, about all the paths we could have taken. That they actually exist, you know, and Richard and Leslie fly around in their seaplane visiting these alternate realities. And so my thing was to write a song for each chapter that took on the theme, but without sort of Mickey Mousing it, you know, without repeating it, without singing about what's going on in the chapter. So I was let's see who my influences at the time. I was getting very into Steve Earle and the Hooters, who are friends of mine, as far as using mandolins and sort of more of I don't want to say country, because country nowadays is something totally different. And it wasn't really old school country either. It was a kind of using country instruments like the mandolin in a rock way. So I'm
thinking of Bruce Hornsby. He has a song.
Yeah. Some of it was. I'm trying to think. I mean, the songs were a little bit different. There's one that reminds me of Peter Gabriel. There's one that, it's hard for me to describe it. It's kind of a lot of different stuff.
Is it on Apple Music? Can people access it today?
No, it's never been released. It has never been released because the recordings I did, they were good recordings, but we considered them demos at the time, and we were gonna do it again in a quote unquote proper studio. But looking back, they sounded pretty good, not super hi-fi, but pretty good. I don't know, maybe one day I'll release it if Richard and Leslie are okay with it.
I'd certainly like to hear it. It sounds interesting. Very interesting. So you're in the hospital. You're working on producing this album, this eclectic, unusual album for Richard, and you decide then, okay, I'm going to move into the world of acting. So how did that transition happen?
Well, I was very disappointed that we couldn't get the Richard Bach record, sold. We couldn't get it picked up. They were very disappointed, and meanwhile, Motown had just dropped me. You know, they didn't have any interest in the one album, and I don't think I really wasn't a good fit for that label. Honestly, they were at that time trying to sort of branch out and do different things. It wasn't the Motown that we all remember. So I think, a casualty of that. And I lost a lot of money through the whole rock climbing accident, and then I lost my record company and my record deal, and I was broke, and I still had this fixator on my leg. I think at this point I was hobbling around a little bit, and a friend of mine did voiceover. A good friend who I'd known for quite some time, and he'd made his living doing voiceover and acting, but mostly voiceover. And I thought, well, maybe I could do that, because I'd done voices and dialects and character voices just for fun all my life. I drive my friends crazy and make my girlfriends want to leave me by just never shutting up. Imagine living with Robin Williams when he's on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can imagine.
I had no other outlet for it. So I made a little demo tape and sent it around to the agents in Atlanta where I was living, and immediately started getting work. I thought, okay, this works. And the idea of just going into a studio, doing something fun for an hour and getting paid for it was very attractive to me, rather than getting an advance on an album, spending months and months in the studio, doing everything myself usually. And then maybe the record will get released and maybe it won't. It was more social. It was quicker. It was more immediate. And I liked the work, I liked that. And that led to acting, and that led to improv comedy, which I fell in love with. And after about a year of doing that in Atlanta, I figured this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I'm going to go to LA. At this point, I'm 40 years old. You don't go to LA at 40 years old to start an acting career, but I didn't know that. So
no, nobody does that.
No, but I had a special skill set, though, a particular skill set that worked out for me, and I did get working pretty quickly in voiceover and then in acting. And started out acting. I started out mostly in comedy, but then I ended up probably doing more drama than comedy, which was funny because I never thought I would act at all. In fact, in Atlanta, when my agents wanted to send me out for on-camera jobs, I said, I don't know how to do that. But just like with Foghat and the bass playing, they threw me in,
Say yes and learn later,
Say yes and learn later. Yeah. So I worked very hard, studied very hard. And improv comedy really, I would say, is the basis. That's the thing that showed me the way into acting for me, rather than, traditional method acting, I would say, even though I do consider myself a method actor to an extent now. I mean, a lot of those precepts are the way I work, but I definitely came out of improv.
And when you say method acting, are you talking being in character when the camera stops recording? Are you talking?
No, not so much, but the idea that you work very hard to understand who the character is, in terms of what the writer has written, and in terms of what you're feeling from the script, what your reaction is, and what you can bring to it personally,
That's the actor's studio concept, the idea of
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of extreme stuff I think went on in the actor's studio. I didn't agree with. A lot of people don't agree with. I guess if I had to point at somebody who I was closely aligned with, it would be Stella Adler rather than Lee Strasberg. But just the idea that you work very hard to become the character, quote unquote. There's part of it. It's a game of make believe. It's you pretend to be this person, and the way you do it is not by moving a certain way or talking a certain way. It's by going inside and trying to think like the person and figure out what motivates them. Why are they saying what they're saying? Why are they doing what they're doing? And it's a dance between the writer and the actor. you read a script and the writer had something in mind, and it hits you, and you have something in mind. You relate to those words a certain way, and there's this kind of symbiosis that happens. So I guess that's what, to me, method acting is. When method acting came along, prior to that, it was more what method actors call indicating. It was a lot of sort of physical training went into it. It wasn't, and it was more stylized. And then, along comes Brando and people like him. And they used to say when he walked on the stage, it was like, one of the stagehands was walking on the stage. It just all of a sudden looked so much more real than everything else going on. And that's what you try to do, is get to a place of truth, of reality with the character. So you're doing something that for you is truthful. You find the truth in the character, what's been written, and you relate to it in some kind of truthful way, so that you can bring that to life, and people can, Larry Moss says, cellular resonance. They can feel cellular resonance with what you're doing, because it's coming out of your eyes, it's coming out of your actions, what you're experiencing inside. I guess method acting is working from the inside out, rather than, like Laurence Olivier said, he worked from the outside in. He was doing the movie Sleuth, and apparently he couldn't quite get the character for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then one day he comes in wearing a mustache. He said, I got it. Just that mustache gave him the part. And you never know. I mean, that's happened to me before, like a physicality. Anything can trigger you. A tone of voice, a physicality, a certain line in the script. That's who this guy is. That line. I remember on Lost, I played a character on Lost who was a very nerdy psychic, very just sort of nerdy, uncharismatic guy. And he was Australian. I thought, well, this is interesting, because people think of Aussies as, good old Aussies might throw a couple of prawns on the barbie, and here's this very, timid guy. And there was one line in the original script, the first draft that I got to audition with, that gave me the character. He's sitting in a booth in some sort of arcade offering psychic readings. And one of the leads in the show come up, and Emily DeRavin come up and say, well, how much does it cost to get a reading? And he points to the sign and he says, these are my pricings. And that word pricings, that just gave me the whole character somehow.
Because somebody else might say rate, or somebody else might say cost, but pricings is quite specific. Yeah. And there's something about it that's kind of indicative of who he is. I totally see that.
Yeah. And so then somehow that got me thinking I wanted to do the voice of Slim Dusty, sort of an old-time Australian folk singer, I guess you could call him. They had a big hit called A Pub With No Beer. And he has a sort of very reedy voice when he sings. It's sort of up here. And also when I was in Melbourne one time, I was watching TV late at night, and there was this minister had a similar voice, very sort of nerdy, very sort of weaselly almost. Yes, we like to come and bring, it was just that whole sort of thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to give him a different kind of Aussie. You know what I mean? And so that was very interesting. And because the guy was a psychic, that the way I related to that was I meditate a lot. And so that kind of inner perception, seeing things from a place of stillness, that helped a lot with that too. So, I mean, I guess that's an example of how, just you never know what's going to trigger you. A lot of actors, they'd like to just read the script, and whatever their first impression is invaluable. They feel that's valuable. I don't want to be distracted while I'm reading this first script. I want this first time. That's very important. And sometimes that happens, and sometimes you read something that's like, what the hell am I going to do with this? And you read it 10 more times, and you make notes, and you create a backstory, and you do that. And, you come up with something. But it's like writing a song. Same thing with writing a song. Sometimes it pops out, and sometimes you have to work your ass off.
But also your ability with accents places you in a unique position. You can do multiple accents. You can do lots of different. You played the Russian president.
Mm-hmm.
Accents are hard, and they're hard to do well. So you have a competitive advantage straight away. So tell me about 24, and was it an extensive audition process for that show, or how did that come about?
No, it originally was going to be a 3-day job on one episode. I did a very quick audition. At the time, the character was much more Putin-esque as opposed to Putanesque.
Did he have a little cat? And was he a villainous? I haven't seen the show, but was he a villainous creature, or was he?
He was a bit at that time, and in that draft of the script, he was a hard ass, and I played him that way in the audition. But then they changed the script, and he was less of a hard ass, and so I ended up playing him sort of like the ambassadors and embassy people I'd been surrounded by growing up when I grew up, the years I spent in Europe. Because once we're in Philadelphia, we spent a couple of years in Greece, a couple of years in Italy, and my dad would interact with these embassy people, and they were all very elegant and well-spoken and well-educated and sort of gracious. So I brought a little bit of that to them, which is miles away from where it started out in the first draft. And it seemed to work for them, because they picked up on that, and they ended up making me almost one of the good guys, But, I always felt I was the one person on that show who didn't play status. Because that show is all about playing status, especially in the CTU. Somebody walks in the door and they're a new person, who've come to take over a job. They're going to play high status. They're just going to talk down. That's really what the show is, and I didn't do that. So I was my wife and I, Kathleen Gotti, who played my wife. We actually ended up being set up as the sane couple, the functional couple, as opposed to Greg Itzen and Gene Smart's couple, which were very dysfunctional, and a central part of the plot. Their dysfunctionality was a central part of the plot. And then in the last season, they made me the bad guy, which was great, because two things you hope for on 24. One, don't kill me. And two, make me the villain. Please make me the villain. Because they're great at that. You're watching a whole season and you think somebody's the good guy, and boom. No, they killed everybody. So it turned out that I killed everybody in season 8.
And tell me, when you're going on to a show like that, right? And I've spoken to a couple of people about this before. You're obviously quite nervous. You're going into a show, a pretty damn big show. How do you manage? How were you able to, did you kind of ease yourself into it? Where you've got to be confident to get on that set, right? Yeah.
Well, I've been doing it for a while. I guess I'm a bit of a ham. I rarely had full-blown stage fright, I would say. I feel in a way I haven't been as intimidated by working with great actors as I should have been at sometimes, but I felt pretty comfortable that they're very tight family. Everybody from the hair and makeup to the sound people, the light people, the actors, everybody's just really glad to be there. As in most shows I've ever worked on, everybody's just really glad they've got a great job. They love what they do and they're making good money and they're grateful for it. And it was a very laid back set. And I would say improvised dialogue more on that show than any other one, which is the last thing you would think, because it's this heavy duty drama show. It's so tight and punchy. But, and I saw it with the other actors, with Greg and Gene, it's like, can I say this instead of this? I mean, sure, whatever. And sometimes they'd ask me, okay, I want you to be on the phone, but we don't know what you're supposed to be saying, so just make something up. And, and it was,
well, that's where the improv skills come into it. That's where your confidence as an improvisational artist as well. And that's where all the stand-up comedy comes in. That's where all of these pieces, the musicality, all of it comes together at a certain time, right? To life experience to be able to do that and to handle it.
I suppose also having performed musically, most of my life, ever since I, went to elementary schools, when I was in elementary school and played these little made up songs and stuff. All of that had given me a sense of comfort. I don't know about confidence, but comfort performing. And the fact is, I'm almost more relaxed with 3 cameras pointing at me than I am walking into a room with people I don't know. In fact, I would say I'm definitely more relaxed there.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. There's a certain zen to it. There's a certain focus to it. You're there, you know exactly what you're doing. You like what you're doing. You're feeling the buzz off the other actors. Hard to say. I mean, as far as the relaxing, why I feel focused and comfortable and relaxed there more than other situations, I don't really know for sure. I really don't. When I get nervous, I guess it was more doing a play when I, worry about blowing a line or something like that. I don't know why, but I'm grateful that it is that way because it's allowed me to enjoy the process.
So you moved into acting for 17 years. You were away from music for 17 years.
Yeah.
What happened when you came back to music after that break? What was the world of music like?
It's very different. During my acting years, I had been doing a lot of improv comedy, and my main thing in improv comedy is musical improv comedy, making up songs. I'm really good at that, and in those days, I made the most of that, and got a lot of I got jobs from that, and so that was my relation to music during those years. I don't think I really wrote any songs in those years, or if I did, I don't remember them. When I came back, I would say a lot of it had to do with the fact that you could make a record on a laptop computer. You didn't need a studio. You didn't need a whole huge. I had a studio in my house before, but it was huge. You could make a record on a set. You could be in your dressing room. You could be in a trailer, with a little keyboard and be recording your record. And so that was part of it. That's part of what got me into it. That was also, I'd had a big life change. I'd gone through 2 years of being very, very ill. I had bipolar disorder. It was undiagnosed at the time. I didn't know what it was, but I'd spent 2 years just being non-functional. And when I crawled back from that, I was in a very emotional place, I guess, and that wanted to come out in music, I think. Wanted to come out in songs. So I guess those two things, the fact that that it wasn't as big a deal to record something, and that I just sort of needed to at that time.
And bipolar would have been a lifelong condition, right? But you sought help or guidance, or you got it diagnosed then following years and years of it being undiagnosed. What was that like? How does that happen? Like,
well, I didn't know. Like as growing up, I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was me. That's most undiagnosed bipolars. They just think this is the kind of person I am. I start things and I don't finish them. I get real excited about something and then decide that it's crap. I'm very social, and then all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, I'm not social and I don't want to see anybody. There's just something. That's who I am. I'm an asshole, And in fact, you learn that your whole life. You learn that that's who you are, And I think a lot of bipolar treatment, like in bipolar, the primary line of treatment is medication. It really has to be. It's a neurological disease, and it's genetic, and you have to manage it with medication. But you need talk therapy too. And for me, the main reason was to understand what had happened and how it shaped my behavior and the way I think about myself and about about everything, really. So, as I was growing up, I wasn't a type 1 bipolar who went crazy manic. I'm type 2, who goes from being normal or maybe somewhat hypomanic to long periods of depression. So it was, there wasn't a big red flag sticking out. And certainly not when I was a kid. There was a much less awareness of things like that. My folks sent me to psychiatrists when I was a kid just because they thought I wasn't very happy. I didn't find out 2 years later that that's why they sent me. At the time, it was just like, oh, I got another stupid thing I got to do. And plus, I got to leave school for 2 hours to go do it. And it did absolutely no good. They had no clue what was going on with me. It's just a lot of nonsense. And so I didn't even think in terms of that had anything to offer me. And as time went on, I got, I tried to make myself a better person through sort of natural medicine and spiritual practices, which, are a huge part of my life, really. But there was always this thing that I was fighting, and it got worse and worse. It started out very physical, like becoming allergic to every kind of food, just getting brain fog all the time, and getting really bad depressions. This really most started after I moved to LA. Moving to LA was great. I immediately started having a good time and making good contacts and having a good, but physically I was a mess. And I went to a number of naturopathic doctors to try to figure out what was wrong. And they all thought, well, you've got chronic fatigue. And they would try to treat it with homeopathic remedies or with herbs or with this or with that. None of it did anything. And one doctor suggested I take Prozac, which was a new thing at the time. He gave me a book to read, Listening to Prozac. And I thought, I read it, and it's very pro-Prozac. And in the book, you see people who take it who are not necessarily depressed or don't think they're depressed, but they just start feeling better. And it details all the way they do feel better and are more productive or creative, where I said, oh, man, where has this been all my life? So I started taking it, and it worked for a while. It worked. And then at one point, I started noticing this cycling happening because I hadn't been given any kind of mood stabilizer to go with it. You can't really just give a bipolar an antidepressant because it'll tend to kindle them, into cycling. So that started to happen, and I got worried about that. And also, I started hearing a lot of negative things about Prozac there. I mean, there was a huge backlash to Prozac that came after the listening to Prozac years. People were having a hard time getting off it, or people would come off it and feel suicidal. I think it was the first of the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and it was kind of a new thing, and people didn't understand it. In the book, Listening to Prozac, it says, the guy says there are no known withdrawal effects. Complete bullshit. They're terrible withdrawal effects if you just stop it. Anyway, I was hearing all of these negative things about Prozac. I figured I'd stop it, and I did. And that's when things got really bad. And why exactly? At the time, I thought, well, Prozac has destroyed me. It has ruined my life. But what I think really happened was that it kindled the bipolar because I wasn't taking a mood stabilizer, and then stopping it also kindled a cycling thing. And I just got in worse shape than I've ever been in my life. Just absolute bottom of the barrel depression. And it went on for months and months and years. And then after about a year that I would say, I would get these brief periods of hypomania. I asked one of my naturopathic doctors, because I felt like I don't want to take any more psychiatric drugs. That's the devil. I don't want to do that. So I went to naturopathic doctors and tried all these remedies again. And I asked one guy, I said, this is what's happening to me. Am I manic depressive? He said, no, there's no such thing. No, it's just toxicity of this and blah, blah, blah. So I just kept trying to do that. I moved out of LA for most of the time. I was in a cabin up in the woods, just hiding from the world. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And then it got to the point where I just sort of hit bottom. I got an audition to go in and audition to be the host of a comedy show. And I went in, I felt horrible. I told my agent, listen, I'm in terrible shape. She said, listen, this is really going to be a show. You got to go in and do this. I couldn't. I went in there and I sucked. And I'm walking out just feeling horrible and also thinking to myself, The Daily Show, what kind of stupid name is that for a show? And who knows? Maybe if I'd have been healthy, we never would have had Jon Stewart, which would have been.
I was just going to say, we're talking Jon Stewart's Daily Show here, right?
Yeah, which would have been a great loss to mankind. I don't think I would have got that part anyway, but that was the bottom for me. And I asked my friend Dee Marcus, I would call my fairy godmother, is sort of one of the leading lights of improv comedy in LA. I just told her my situation. She said, I know a guy you need to see. And she introduced me to the guy who became my psychiatrist and has been since then, and who literally saved my life. Within half an hour, he diagnosed me. He figured out what had been going on. I showed him charts that I had been keeping for about a year, these graphs of my moods. And you can see, and I had thought it was, this is toxicity running out. This is Prozac kicking back in and then stopping. I had all these theories as to what was going on because people were telling me bipolar didn't exist. He said, no, it's mood swings, it's bipolar. And we just started trying different medications. And
Remotrogen.
Yeah, that's what I'm taking now. We started out with Depakote, actually. I think Depakine is a generic name. That worked well. The Lamotrigine, or Lamictal is the brand name is called. That worked even better. And then we tried adding different antidepressants. At first, I was very hesitant because of what had happened with Prozac, but he gave me a little understanding of what had happened. So we went through a number of antidepressants, and some would work okay, some would be really not good. And we just kept tweaking it. He's very intrepid, and so was I at that point. I'd survived 2 years being non-functional, trying to fix myself. And now I was somewhat functional, and I was determined to get all the way functional. And so we just tried everything, and we're relentless. And, now I'm on a combination that I've been on for a number of years, and I feel better than I ever have. And I have been feeling that way for a long time. I don't know, several decades really. And so, yeah, I would say to anybody who's got bipolar out there, don't give up, because I know a lot of people try a medication, a mood stabilizer, and it numbs. Like back in the days of lithium, when people that was the primary line of defense, had a lot of side effects, and people just feel numbed out. And especially bipolar ones who have these, flights of mania, they're gone. The depression's gone, but just this kind of blah feeling takes over. And so they stop taking it, and then they get worse again. And, a lot of people have that experience with medication. They'll try one, but they don't do well with it and they give up, or they try two, or they try three and they give up. But I think if you're bipolar, you got to recognize that you've got to take medication and just keep trying until you find a combination that works. I mean, my life is testament to the fact that you can do that you can get to a point where you don't feel like you're taking drugs. You don't feel blot out. You got your creativity, you got your energy and all of that. I feel the way I should have my whole life, really.
And tell me, when you were in the cabin in the woods, when this thing progressively worse, did you were you tempted, like a lot of people will do, to self-medicate? Alcohol, recreational drugs. Was any of that in the picture?
No, I didn't really drink in those days at all. I don't think I tried to self-medicate with that at all. I did try with like energy drinks and things. I mean, this is pre-Red Bull, but there were things that would have guarana or something in it that would, and that didn't work. You know, it'd make me feel better for 10 minutes and then crash. Trying to think if I did anything else to self-medicate. You know, caffeine. I would just drink caffeine like a maniac just to keep my head above ground. But no, not with drugs.
Good. I'm thinking. Like I've been to LA a couple of times, and you know, you do see people with mental illness. You know, you Skid Row. I'm thinking the kind of descent that people take.
Yeah.
For undiagnosed conditions. And the self-medication that they become involved in, and childhood trauma and stuff like that. I was also thinking about when you were in hospital with a broken foot. Thank God fentanyl wasn't around.
Yeah.
Because they would have been pumping that shit into you.
Yeah. Well, they pumped Demerol, a lot of Demerol. And then when I was out of the hospital for a long time, I would take things like Percodan. And I never got into trouble with it, but I saw how people can get into trouble with it. And, you know, I knew about that, so I was careful with it. I only took it when I had to. Fentanyl, I'm glad that never happened.
So am I. But when you, in your work now, you're doing a lot of stand-up comedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you talk about any of this?
The only time I do is when I perform with a group called My Voices Have Tourette's, which is a wonderful group of stand-up comics who all have various disorders. One guy's bipolar, another guy's got extreme social anxiety. Two people have Tourette's. One is autistic and bipolar. You know, there's and they talk about this stuff, and they do great comedy sets about it. It's really inspiring. You know, they've won awards at festivals, and they're great. And sometimes I'll sit in with them, and that's when I talk about it. You know, that's when I do comedy about it. And I haven't done it on my own. I'm not sure why. I guess I'm just more interested in talking about other things. Maybe at some point I will, but that's my outlet for talking about that.
Well, there is potentially a treasure chest, a treasure trove of stuff, of material in there, if it can be repackaged in a comedic way. But also, it's very personal and very, very. You know, I know a lot of artists. I just think a lot of artists, when they get very personal, they have a way of connecting.
Yeah, no, it is personal. Yeah, perhaps I will go into that. You know, during those years, I kept a journal, very long journal, and very detailed about everything I was going through. And you know, I think the first time that My Voices Have Tourette's asked me if I would, you know, perform with them, I said, well, hard for me to find anything funny about all that crap I went through. You know? I would probably get up on stage and say, hey, if you're bipolar, take your meds. Don't stop. But I did, you know, there was one period when I was, I guess, during one hypomanic episode, I related in a comedic bit about where I was doing Shakespeare in Bakersfield, California, of all places. And I decided to speak Shakespearean English on stage and off. There's your method acting right there. And, you know, that made a very funny bit, being in Bakersfield, California, the arsehole of the world.
I think I went through Bakersfield on a bus many years ago on my way to San Francisco.
Yeah. Going through it is you know, the way to go. Actually, I had a fun time there. I shouldn't diss Bakersfield, but it is not the place where you walk around speaking Shakespearean English.
So you moved to Iceland in 2014.
Yes.
So tell me, like, I mean, yeah, Iceland, Los Angeles, Iceland. What prompted that move? What were you thinking about? Was it a
Well, I came to visit.
hmm.
I'd seen a Bobby Fischer documentary, and that put the word Reiki in my head. And when it came Christmas time, my parents had passed, and I wanted to go somewhere Christmassy and somewhere without a lot of tourists, which there weren't at the time, and somewhere I'd never been. So I thought, I'll go to Reykjavik. So I did, and little did I know I'd fall in love with it. I just fell in love with it right away. It's just something about it. The minute I got off the plane, it was just like, I like this. And then I started walking around.
What's the this? What is it?
It's a spiritual connection. That's at the heart of it. I have a spiritual connection to this place. It's really hard to explain. I mean, I can tell you a zillion things I like about it, that I love about Reykjavik, I love about Iceland. You mentioned Los Angeles. Reykjavik is the polar opposite of Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a huge, sprawling place. You can't survive without a car. Everybody lives, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour away from each other. It's very hard to sort of keep in contact with your friends. And, you go play a gig or something and you don't hang out afterwards because you got to be sober to drive home, and nobody stays out very late. And I don't know, it's just a very disconnected vibe compared to Reykjavik, which is just this tiny, small town that thinks it's a city. But, it's a small town that has all the city stuff in it, venues and pubs and restaurants and just all kinds of stuff, great creative scene. But it's all very compact. So you just bounce from one thing to the other. I don't even have a car. I just walk everywhere. I can do 3 gigs a night. I can do a comedy show and then go to a blues show and then go see somebody else play a show, or, and then everybody gets together and goes to somebody's house and, has an after party. It's a very different lifestyle. And I would say I made, by the time I had been there 3 times, the third time I was there, I decided to move. I'd made more friends there than I had in the rest of the world combined. Like, pretty good friends.
So here's what I'm wondering, like, do you think it's possible that a city like Los Angeles can exacerbate mental health issues? If you are somebody with bipolar, Los Angeles is the place you do not want to be. You need to be in places like Reykjavik, where there's a sense of community and a shared kind of there's something. Do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, yes and no, I would say. I know for me, yeah, it is a more isolating city, which is not good. You got massive air pollution, which doesn't help anything. There's the stress of driving everywhere. None of that helps. On the other hand, here in Reykjavik, Iceland has one of the highest antidepressant uses in the world. Now, I think a lot of that is because psychiatry is kind of behind the curve here. It's one of the few critiques I have of Iceland. They're just a little behind here. And I know a lot of bipolars who self-medicate, or that are misdiagnosed with ADHD and given speed and get worse. I know a lot of people, in fact, even in our comedy scene, a lot of people are struggling with stuff, bipolar, anxiety, depression, ADHD, anxiety. So I think, again, like, definitely bipolar and some of these other ones too, are not just situationally caused or caused by your upbringing or anything like that. A lot of it is physical,
genetic.
And of course, there's a relationship a documented relationship between creativity and bipolar. A lot of creative people tend to be bipolar for whatever reason. And so as far as Reykjavik being a better place to be bipolar, I guess it is. It's a better place to be connected to other humans, which is always good. Although sometimes when you're really depressed, you don't want to see anybody.
Want to be around anybody. No.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Thorhatler, very good comedian. He's got social anxiety. You know, his comedy set, he talks about what COVID was like. You can't be with any more than 10 people. Fine with me. That's way too much. He loved COVID. I don't have to go out. I don't have to talk to anybody. Perfect.
No, there were some benefits. When COVID hit me, when I first started working from home, I was delighted for a couple of months. I was thrilled. The isolation, the solitude, I loved it. Lived in London for 3 years, and by the end of that 3 years, London is like 7 and probably 24 million people, 12 million people in the greater metropolitan area. It was grim.
Yeah.
And, I had to get out of there and get to Berlin because it was just such an isolating. It's a strange dichotomy. You're millions of people, but you've never felt so alone.
Yeah.
And you in a small little community like Reykjavik, you just feel, I would imagine you would just feel totally part of a community. But human beings, I mean, you don't even need to study the history of evolution to understand that we're tribal creatures.
Yeah.
And need to live in tribes. Small tribes, essentially.
That works for me for sure. I know a lot of Icelanders think I'm crazy for living here because they want to be in LA where it's sunny and, you know, and if they're into comedy, they want to, you know, advance their careers and whatnot. And, you know, I hear from a lot of people, I don't want to walk down the street and see the person I slept with last week, you know, or see my ex-wife, you know, and you're gonna see them, you know?
Yeah.
It's just so small. Everybody knows everybody. Half the people are related to each other. It really is a tight little thing. And then a lot of people do complain about that. They don't care for it. For me, it works. I love it, you know. Having been bipolar most of my life, you know, being, you know, experiencing bipolar most of my life and not being very social and not being, I don't know, I got more social when I got into acting, a lot more, but it was still, and that plus living in LA tends to cut down on your socializing because everything's so disconnected. So when I got here, I realized, man, I need this. I need a social life. I need to hang out with my friends. I need to see my friends regularly. I need to go out and have a drink and talk shit and laugh. And, you know, half the reason I do comedy probably is just to hang out, you know, with the gang afterwards. You know, I have a theory that a great deal of what human beings do is an excuse to hang out afterwards. You know, like that's where the fun is. And so, I just found that I need this. The person I am that I've come to be needs this kind of social connection. And I look back, when I go back to LA and I drive around and say, how the hell did I ever do this? You know, how did I do this? How did I live without what I have now?
Would you have any fears about, in terms of you're separated now from the industry to a little bit of the platforms and technologies helping us do self-tapes and auditions? Was that, did you factor that into your thinking when you made the move?
I did. I did, but I felt that fuck it, you know, it was more important to me how I spent my hours and my days, you know. So I think it comes down to, how are you spending the hours of your days? How are you spending each day? Are you driving around going to auditions and then going home exhausted? Or are you, you know, having coffee with a friend and then, you know, have lunch with somebody else and then go out and see somebody play a gig and then do a show and go, you know, and then just all this stuff, you know. It's, you know, how I spend my hours and minutes is more important to me than if my career advances. And the way I feel about it now is that I'm more interested in writing my own stuff, creating my own stuff, my own shows, doing stuff with other people also, than I am in, getting a recurring part on a TV show or something. If I get that call, I do still audition for stuff. And, I like doing it, but I'm not going to live in LA just to continue doing that. It doesn't make me as happy.
And in terms of United States itself, I think we were talking about this the other day, and it was Rudyard Kipling that said, what does ye of England know that only England knows? Mm. So what have you learned about the United States being apart from it?
Well, a lot of what's happened since I've been here, shortly after I got here, Donald Trump appeared. And I think I recognized who and what he is before anybody, for a number of reasons. And that really, when I think of America now, I think of it in crisis, because this guy is still out there and he could win again. And I think he's very dangerous. And I think what he's done to the country is horrible. The extreme divisiveness, it had already started a while before, but he just amped it up. And, this post-truth era we're living in now, where you can have a guy like, what's his name, George Santos, who lied his way into Congress. And none of the people in his party seem to have a problem with it. And it's just lying is the norm now. Nothing has to be true. Nothing Trump says is true ever. Or if it's true by accident. And so when I look at America, honestly, I look at America and I see Trump. The America that I come from, I'll always love, the music. It made me who I am. Mm. The unique culture of America is just great. But if you ask me what I see from Iceland, I see Trump, and I'm deathly afraid of what's going to happen, if he gets in power again.
Yeah, I look at the United States, and part of me sees Trump, but part of me sees Obama. Mm-hmm. And Obama was elected and re-elected, mm-hmm. right? So he had to get re-elected. So it wasn't an accident. I mean, you're talking, yes, there is obviously a percentage of the United States. Like, Trump is the symptom of a problem. Mm-hmm. He's the vomit on the kitchen floor, right? He's the what follows something else. And I just wonder what is. I haven't been to the United States in 10 years, but I just wonder what's going on. And I suspect it might have something to do with growing income inequality.
Well, probably, yeah. The outsourcing of jobs. I mean, there are real reasons that people who follow Trump decided to follow Trump. They're not all, racist, people who want an authoritarian leader. Mm. But he is, if he's the vomit on the floor, he's a malignant alien vomit that can get up and eat you. So, in a way, he was able to rise as he did because of what's going on in the country. That is true. He suckered a whole group of people into thinking he was going to help them. And they do need help, people in rural America whose jobs have been outsourced. There's just all kinds of reasons why that a whole group of people is very dissatisfied. And he came in and said, I'm your guy. Mm. He's not their guy, he's not the guy. He's a malignant narcissist who just wants power and doesn't care about anybody but himself. So, I would say in a way he's a symptom, but he is also a cause, and a very powerful cause. I mean, these kind of people, malignant narcissists, are just extremely powerful because they don't give a fuck. They'll do or say anything, and they enjoy hurting people. They enjoy causing chaos and messing things up. And just, I read Donald Trump's Twitter feed, that's all you got to do. So, yeah, he's a symptom, but what I see, I don't see him as a symptom. When I look at him, I look at him as something to be scared of and to do something about.
You see him as the protagonist.
I do. I see him as, because I think as bad as, the divisiveness is with Fox News and right-wing radio, and then on the other hand, the left with their uber wokeness and, trying to make everybody think like them. There is all of that. But he's, you could say that in Germany, Hitler was a symptom of this huge discontent after World War I. Germany had just been humiliated and defeated and screwed over by the Versailles Treaty. The Versailles Treaty is, everybody there saw it. And along comes this guy and says, I'm going to make Germany great again. And, he had something like a 90% approval rating. He did better than Trump. So, in a way, he was a symptom of what was going on there. But then look what happened. He became the cause of something much worse. So that's the way I look at Trump. When he was president, I just think this guy could launch a nuclear weapon because he had a bad hair day. There's nothing this guy won't do. There's no bottom. There's no lie he won't tell. There's nobody he won't hurt. And I think now America's in a very precarious place. The Democrats have Biden, and they got nobody else. They're not even trying to get anybody else. They're just, okay, I guess we're going to go with Biden. Yeah, Biden's still pretty good. Yeah. Biden does not have a good approval rating, even among Democrats. And the Republicans, the only people they're even thinking about running are Trumpers. They're Trump light, and Trump will eat them for breakfast. Ron DeSantis is going to go up against Trump. His whole thing is being Trumpy. Same with Nikki Haley. She worked for him. She's going to get crushed. A malignant narcissist is a black belt in the art of destruction. They can't stand up to him. He'll destroy them. So as it looks now, he's going to be the nominee unless he ends up in prison, which I kind of doubt. And I don't know what the Democrats are thinking. I really don't. Biden's a good man, but can he take on Trump again? Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's 2024 is the election, right? So if the economy is in good shape, and if there's some kind of closing of the gap, I don't think Trump has a chance.
Maybe not in the general election. Yeah. I think as of now, I don't see him not getting the nomination. Although I could be wrong. If things do get better, if things look up, of course, nowadays things can look up as much as they want, and the other side is going to spin it that they're getting worse. And that's just what happens. There is no reality anymore. It's just who yells the loudest. But if the numbers are up, gas prices are reasonable. Biden does some of these things he talked about in the State of the Union about just making small things easier for the ordinary person. If he keeps the course steady, maybe people will pick him. But I think it's probably going to be him versus Trump, and Trump is going to be 10 times worse than he ever was. And he's going to do a lot of damage, even if he doesn't win. And he's going to say he won, even if he didn't. And that, he'll probably instigate more violence. It's just, as long as he's there, pissing in the pot, things are going to go bad. Bad things are going to happen. So,
do you think there are guardrails in place constitutionally, and like you do see he was in a grand jury investigation. There was some kind of deposition he had to make a couple of weeks. It looks like the system is acting to against him in some capacity, in some shape, that the guardrails are there.
He's been sued several thousand times, lost a lot of them. He comes out on the courthouse steps and declares that he won every time, whether he did or not. Stuff just seems to bounce off of him. There are guardrails, but there's things like, oh, we can't go after Trump now because he's a candidate. He's a declared candidate. This will be bad for the country. Things like that. There were, when people talk about impeachment, even they were saying, this is bad for the country, to impeach. It's bad for the country to prosecute an ex-president, all that kind of thinking. I wish they would throw him in jail and throw away the key. But that's a hard job, for somebody like this. I don't know if they're going to nail him on any of this. I really, really don't. There's a huge chunk of the American population that thinks he won the election, that January 6th was totally justified, that the whole Russia investigation was a hoax. And there's a smaller amount to think that Democrats drink the blood of babies,
Well, they think that Hillary Clinton keeps babies in a pizza bar, a pizza restaurant.
Right.
It's like there is some fantastical ideas out there, probably on both sides of the divide, but particularly on the right. Conspiracy, fantasy, woe is me, the world is against us, all this kind of stuff. And if I'm if I'm a Pennsylvania steel worker who's for the last 20 years is watching his plant close down and his opportunities, and then he's working for $10 an hour flipping burgers, he's going to find it hard. Which way does he vote? Because he only has two options. Right. So when you vote for Trump, you're pulling the pin in the grenade. That's what you're doing. You vote for the Democrats, you're voting for the status quo. If you're flipping burgers, you might as well pull that pin.
Reminds me of what Jim Jeffries said about again, Donald Trump appeals to people in that situation. He pushes their button. He does it by blaming it on an other. He finds an other to blame it on. Rather than taking a constructive view on anything. It's the fault of the foreigners, the immigrants, the Democrats, the liberals. It's everybody's fault, and everybody sucks except me and my people. But it's all bullshit. He has nothing to offer anybody. He's not going to help the working person. He's not going to help anything. He's not even capable of it. Aside from everything else, he's just woefully incompetent. And I must have read, I'm just finishing up, what is it called? Trump versus the United States or something. I've read a zillion books, the ones everybody knows about and the ones people don't.
Did you read the Mary Trump book?
Yeah.
So that was fun. I didn't read it.
Yeah. And you see his whole life and what he's done and how he is. And he ain't going to change, He ain't going to change. He's not going to go away. He's not going to, if he runs and loses, he's not going to accept it. A malignant narcissist can never be seen to lose. Like he said, he's had all these court cases and he always spins it that he won, that it's to his advantage somehow. And I didn't think he was going to accept the results of the last election. I lost is not words going to ever come out of his mouth,
And not again. So tell me, apart from psychiatry, what could Iceland learn from America? What else does America do really well that you think?
Interesting question. I don't know. I think we're doing pretty good here.
That's the feeling I'm getting.
Yeah. America's America. It has this long history of, I, as a musician, I look at the music that comes out of there, which is just, world shaking. It's the center of a lot of things, movies, fashion, blah, 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 science, innovation. But it's a big place. It's a huge place. Iceland is the size of a town in Boise, Idaho. It's, and I think there's a reason probably why there's not a lot of great psychiatrists here is because they can make more money going elsewhere. They want to be in the big centers, they want to work at the big teaching hospitals or whatever. It's, there's such different places. I mean, just size alone, I think there are 340,000 people here in the whole country, maybe 200,000 in Rejkjavik. And what could Iceland learn from America? I don't know. Lower the prices on restaurants, maybe.
I hear they're terribly expensive. And so, last question: what does the future hold for Nick Jameson?
Well, right now I'm really into. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot some music videos of some of my comedy songs. I am not a big fan of the 15-second TikTok piece and the 60-second Instagram thing and having to do that every day to let people know you exist and that's how you gain a following and that's how you succeed. I find that very hard to relate to. I've got to find some way of getting my stuff out there that works for me, and just little snippets of whatever doesn't, so I'm gonna record these songs. I'm gonna promote the hell out of them. I'm gonna put together an album of straight ahead songs and comedic songs. I'm going to keep doing stand-up and see where that goes. I'm going to start filming everything. I want to film it in good quality. I also don't go with this thing that, no, just do any kind of crappy quality. Just get it out there every day. Put stuff out there. It doesn't matter if it's any good. Just get it out there. Get it out there. Get it out there. Engage your fans. No, I want to work on something. And when it's ready, I want to put it out. So that's what I'm looking at doing. I'm hoping to take my improv comedy band, which hasn't performed in many years, to Edinburgh this year. We're having financial issues with it right now, but that I'd be very excited about if we can do it.
Is the Edinburgh Fringe Festival?
Yeah, Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Yeah. We have it's Gary Anthony Williams, Fuzzy Morse, and myself. We have a 3-piece band. We go on stage with like 16, 18 instruments, and we swap around and play them all. We play songs in all these different styles and all these different kind of mashups. So we improvise all the lyrics. And there's nobody doing that. There's nobody that I know of, not, known anyway. And there's a lot of musical improv has come a long way since I was doing it in LA. A lot of freestyle rappers. There's a lot of, improvised musicals, improvised, Shakespeare and Jane Austen. My friend Dan O'Connor and Brian Lohman, both of these guys in LA are just doing tons of that long form improvised stuff, and a lot of it musical. But a band, and we're an actual kick-ass band. We go out and we rock it. And my ethos has always been with musical improv is that, number one, the music has to be really good. You should be able to take all the funny out of it, and it's still a good song. So that's what we do. We try to we get something from the audience, and we do the best song we can based on that. And it comes out funny just because of the dynamic of what's happening. But we don't parody musical styles. We don't do anything over the top. If we do a hip hop song, it's a real hip hop song. We do a country song, it's a legit country song, and it's good, So I'm very excited if we can do that. I don't know. It's getting kind of late in the year to do that. We gotta shit or get off the pot with this real soon. But I'm very excited about that if that happens. Other than that, I'm really into stand-up comedy and music is my focus now, more so than voiceover and acting.
And I think we spoke about this before. I'm absolutely convinced that there's a market for quality. and there is a market out there for musicianship, and people who are putting in the grind and creating exquisite music that comes from training, from a classical training. Like it is there, and it is evidenced by the data. The data indicates that classical music is exploding all over the world.
Yeah, you told me about that. That's interesting. I'm a huge classical music fan, huge. I'm very influenced, and I've studied it and everything. That's inspiring. Yeah, you know, I when we talked before, you thought maybe this is a trend or a fashion, all this instant stuff on social media, and I hope it is. I was watching Joe Rogan was talking with Louis C.K. and about the same. Oh, actually, was it Louis? No, it was not Joe Rogan. It was on another interview. And it was with a young guy, and the young guy said, "Well, so how do you relate to all this? The need to put stuff on TikTok and this and that, and put out stuff on social media every day." He said, "Well, I don't have that need. I don't do it. I think it's bullshit." And he talked a lot about the algorithm. You're performing for an algorithm. And it's funny because I had just written the long screed a few days before I saw this. And I'm definitely on the same page with him. To me, yeah, like he was saying that you're tailoring what you're doing, not to people, not to your fans or people who you think might be interested in what you've got to say, but in order to get the algorithm to allow you to be seen. And so you're performing for a bunch of ones and zeros, basically, that are there to make money and no other reason. They don't give a fuck about you. And my thought that I'd had was that, in life, when people notice us and pay attention to us, that means something. When people like us, that means something. When people like something we've done, that means something. When people love something we've done, that means something. When people criticize something, it all means something in real time, in real life. We're wired that way to be emotionally affected by that. And in this artificial world of social media, you're at the mercy of the algorithm as far as who pays attention to you, who acknowledges you. If the algorithm wants people to see you, you might get some acknowledgement from people. How many likes you get is determined by the algorithm. How many loves you get, and people now are trying to manipulate the algorithm. It's all about surf that algorithm, make the algorithm work for you. And Louis C.K. felt, and I agreed, that it's very demeaning. It's very destructive. He was talking in terms of comedy. It's just the death of comedy. It's destroying comedy that you do that. He says he's a big comedy fan, and he watches young people coming up and they got some potential there. And then they get into this whole cycle of trying to please the algorithm, and they just get worse. They get unfunny. All the real stuff goes out. And his answer, and he's in a whole different position, of course. I mean, despite him having been, canceled for quite some time and come back after a lot of struggle, he's still in a position where, he can play Madison Square Garden,
Well, he has an audience, and the audience has not necessarily gone away.
Yeah, he's in a situation where he can say what he said, which is that just do what you do, just get good, go out and do your sets, do your shows, get good, be true to who you are, and again, it's easier for him to say because he has an audience, and people who are trying to get audience, they say, well, that's great. I've been working the clubs for 10 years. I'm not getting anywhere, man. I gotta get on TikTok, I call these clubs, try to get booked, and they say, how many Instagram followers do you have? And Lucy K was saying, yeah, just tell them you don't have Instagram. No, I don't have Instagram. I don't have Facebook. I'll send you a tape.
If that's the case, if the club comedy circuit is asking how many Instagram followers you have, are looking for your social media numbers before they book you.
Yeah.
That forces the artist and the comedian to build up the social media piece.
Right.
Which is not what they need to be doing.
Right. And it's the same with music, apparently there are such things as record companies these days, but in order to get them, or a manager or anybody else, to pay attention to you, you have to have, hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers. It just seems to be a requirement nowadays that, I have a friend here in Iceland who's kind of, I guess you would say, a one-liner comic, and he's blown up on TikTok. He's become, you know, a star on TikTok. He just puts out these little 15-second things of him doing his thing, and he does it like every day, and it works for him. I'm not a one-liner comic, you know. I take on themes and stuff, you know. I do, every set I do is about something. So it's harder for me to fit into that format, A, and B, I don't want to, you know. I just, so I have Louis C.K.'s attitude without his fame. So we'll see how that works out.
Well, no, I do think there is like I said, I think there's a huge market for it, for quality, and not an instant thing. So, and I'll be one of the first in the queue buying a ticket for the improvised the comedy show at Edinburgh Fringe if it materializes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nick. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you, Conor.
To you. Fascinating story, as I suspected it would be. And yeah, let's do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Pleasure.
All right. Take care, lad. Bye-bye.
Guys, I have been living in Iceland for 4 years. Rejkjavik. Now, some of you may have heard tales of the notorious downtown Rejkjavik nightlife and hookup scene. We got a witness over here. For those of you who have, you need to forget that shit right now. You got the PG Disney version. For those of you who have not, I'm going to sum it up for you in one phrase. I'm drunk, I'm horny, you'll do. Or to put it in another way, the volume of alcohol consumed multiplied by the degree of hormonal activity in the lower body is inversely proportional to the number of fucks given about quality control. It's true. You may well begin your Reykjavik evening with normal, healthy blood levels of discretion, due diligence, common sense, and good taste. But by fucking o'clock a.m., chances are real good that you and or the pitiful excuse for a human being standing in front of you will be thinking, I'm drunk. I'm drunker than Darcy. I'm horny. Ooh, a pulse. You'll do. Now, the song I want to sing for you about this is written from the female point of view. Because Lord knows I've seen far too many of my dear sisters from another mister in that town suffer the most ridiculous indignities at the hands of the absolute dregs of my gender, when their only crime was drinking enough Brenovan shots to kill everybody in here 3 times over. So I got to represent. Let me get this going. Oh, one more thing. I have never, ever, ever heard country music in Iceland. I think it's been banned. Along with fresh vegetables, lambskin, condoms, and the word please. But we ain't in Iceland. We in Burbank. They don't talk like this in Burbank either. So we gonna go all Nashville on this son of a bitch. That all right with y'all? Okay. I took the bus in from Hafnarfjörður, looking for some fun. Hope to find my Prince Charming. Well, son, you ain't the one. But there's no one here any better. And it's almost 2:30. And I'm drunk, I'm horny, you'll do. Oh, I broke up with my boyfriend not all that long ago. It was 8 o'clock this evening. Yeah, crazy, right? I know. He was a dickhead and a douchebag. And so are you. But I'm drunk, I'm horny, you'll do. I'm horny and drunk. My standards have sunk. That's why I keep on grabbing your junk. You'll last all of 3 minutes, and then you'll be on your way. Oh, men are so useless. I wish I was gay. When I was a young girl, all the cool boys loved me. But now I'm so old, I'm almost 23. You're the worst guy I've ever met. Oh, and I've met me quite a few. But I'm drunk, I'm horny, come here, you'll do. Morning will come and you'll still be napping. I look at you snoring and think, how the fuck did that happen? Oh, they say love is blind. How I wish that were true. 'Cause I'm getting a headache just looking at you. We'll avoid each other in the supermarket like folks around these parts tend to do. Soon you'll forget me and I'll forget you. But then we'll meet right back here at Snipers Yoker, your place, in a month or two. Saying I'm drunk, I'm horny, you'll do. Sing it with me one last time, folks. Said I'm drunk, I'm horny, you'll do. You pathetic, clueless, broke-ass, slob-ass, vomit all over your shirt, cocaine dripping out your nose, loser. I'm so drunk, so damn horny. Oh, fuck it, give me another shot. You'll do.
You guys have been fantastic. Thank you so much.